We don't hit home runs on this pod. We work station to station. I am back with my battery mate, as always, Dustin, and we're here to discuss the week of Jays action that has passed, and I guess the week upcoming for the week of June 16th, 17th. Dustin, our mid-Jays pulled off a series win against the mighty Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a surprising outcome. I think, I think it says more about the AL Central than, the Blue Jays themselves. But, a win's a win, and, I'm happy to have, continue the midways.
Well, I think, I don't know. I don't think that is the AL Central. I think this is the Jays being mid, right? Like, if the Jays were truly crap, they wouldn't, they would be well below 500. They wouldn't be hovering around it. And I think this is just kind of, giving us a little bit of hope, leading us into the Boston series. Can they maybe pull off a sweep, not a sweep, sorry, but can they pull off a series win and get over the 500 mark? Let's go into the rundown, though, just quickly where we're at here. Going into a 3-game series at home versus the Boston Red Sox. The Jays are 35 and 36, so again, they can see that 500 mark on the highway. It's the next exit coming up. We'll see if they can actually, get off that exit, or if we're going to continue that chase. Boston does come to town on Monday. The Jays are 4.5 games back of the wild card, so that has extended by a game since we last chatted, and 13.5 out of first back of the New York Yankees, which pretty much has stayed pretty stagnant, and I could imagine that will continue to be 13.5 or probably even go up as the Yankees continue to swat teams aside. Dustin, I did have a chance to attend the game on Sunday with my son. Went actually pretty well. He lasted, I think, 6-7 innings in the seats before he got way too fidgety, and then decided that he would do a little tour of the Rogers Center on his own. But good time all around. But at the end of the game, Yimi Garcia had an uncharacteristic 9th inning, and it turns out that he came out of the game with elbow soreness.
Yeah, you hate to see that. I mean, the bullpen, the pitching in general has been one of the bright spots for this team. I know the bullpen's not been great, but he's been one of the ones we can rely on. So to lose him for at least 15 days is not good, and who knows how much longer it will take him to bounce back and be the guy that he was. It's going to be rough. They're going to need the offense even more than they have, and I'm not sure if that's coming around.
Well, it was definitely the fact that he came out from an injury. It's kind of one of those things that, like, you look back and you're not really surprised when you kind of look back and see how that player was performing, because he was getting lit up in that particular inning, and it was, as I said, it was very uncharacteristic. And I didn't initially suspect that there was an issue with an injury. Sometimes pitchers just have off nights or what have you, but he was getting tagged, and that game was unnecessarily close. That's the way at least I put it, than it should have been. The Jays really should have won that game by a handful of runs, but they only ended up winning 7-6. But they get out of it. Nate Pearson comes in and gives up it was a line drive that I think thankfully we had Kevin Kiermaier in there for. I'm not to say Dalton Varsho wouldn't have also made that play, but I think that's the reason you have that. Why you make those moves, improve the defense in the 9th inning, and essentially get out with a series win. Now, speaking of Kevin Kiermaier, he does seem to be settling into essentially a secondary role, which I think he kind of essentially deserves at this team at this point. Like, he's not actually going to bring much to the table in terms of his offense. He's more of a defensive guy. And actually, last season, before the season ended, before that disappointment, and then of course before we re-signed him, I was actually thinking like Kevin Kiermaier would actually be kind of like a really good player on this team, or in terms of like a good supporting player, come in late in the game, play defense, run the bases, do what he has to do, be that maybe that fourth outfielder. The only thing is that his cost is, and his salary is quite high, but I feel like he's kind of sliding into that role almost unintentionally, I guess.
Well, I think, yeah, of course. I mean, given what you've paid for him and the way that you've set up the roster from the start of the season, it seems like the Blue Jays expected him to have a much more consistent and contributing role on the team. It's always, I wouldn't say sad, but it's always kind of a hard thing to watch when, a player who's had some success in the past, I think George Springer kind of falls into this category as well, starts to fall off. They're riding a little bit on their past success, and, it's tough. I think John Schneider himself is sort of a very kind of players manager kind of manager, and so he feels some responsibility to keep them in there. But, I mean, at a certain point, if the team's not winning, you gotta do what you gotta do to make the changes and to put in the guys that are actually contributing and actually winning. And that's what we're seeing, and it's maybe a lot slower than maybe you or I or some other fans would have done in terms of sort of, let's say, swapping out Springer and Kiermaier for Barger and Clement. But, I mean, that's what's going to have to happen here if the Jays want to sniff the playoffs this year.
Well, and I really wonder how that's going to go over with, say, George Springer. I think you could probably sell that to Kevin Kiermaier a little bit easier. But George Springer, I'm not so sure of that. Not to say that's not the right move. He's really not hitting well at all. Although he seems to get a few timely hits of late, but that average is just so low. And the one good thing that, I don't know, a good thing, but they haven't had any kind of snap. If he has maybe like a couple hits, like, oh yeah, we'll move him back to the leadoff. Like, they've kept him where he's at, and I think that's the right move in terms of George Springer. Kiermaier, he came on last season as, he wanted to be the kind of best ninth hitter in baseball. Probably not that this year, but he definitely seems to be kind of sliding into that role that I just discussed. And you know what? I'm here for it. I think if we're gonna pay him and he's gonna be on the roster this year, this is the role he's got to play right now. And until he starts hitting better, which I don't think he really has much of a history of doing, I think this is where he's going to be for now. Obviously, Ernie hits another home run on Sunday. And actually, Dustin, I've kept up my streak of missing every single home run at a game I've been to. So since everybody's laughing at me, and rightfully so. My dad was chuckling. I came back from the washroom and, oh, you missed another home run, man. I'm like, yeah, well, it's like par for the course. But I missed Varsho's grand slam, missed Clement's home run, just kind of usual for me. But moving on to Dalton Varsho, I did want to, I guess, comment on him as kind of get a good view. I did sit in the outfield, I should add. You get a kind of good view of really the outfield. Like, I have been in right field in the bleachers before, and I quite like it, but I actually sat in a dedicated seat in left field, and you get a really good view of kind of how they work, how they move, how they work the outfield. And I don't know, as you would say, Dustin, Dalton Varsho is just a pleasure to watch out there. But I did want to comment because I don't know. I think Dalton Varsho still, for some reason, is still in that kind of shadow of the trade that he was involved in. But I don't think we can speak really highly enough of what he's really doing right now. He's leading the team in home runs, leading the team in RBIs. He's the only Blue Jay who's hit double-digit home runs so far this year. And I think he hit 5th on Sunday, which I'm okay with. I'm not. I want to keep him kind of 5th, 6th down there. I think this is the kind of player that lengthens the lineup a little bit. They tried to put him in the cleanup spot last year, which was a complete disaster. And I don't know whoever's idea that was. I hope they were fired in the offseason. Probably unlikely, but that was a terrible idea. It didn't work out. I do think he's a 5th, 6th guy. Bring some pop down at the bottom of the order, especially if through the 3rd or 4th batter in the lineup are getting on base. But I don't know. Lay some pleasantries on Dalton Varsho for me, Dustin.
Well, I mean, you've done quite a good job yourself there. I mean, yeah, like he's a pleasure to watch defensively. He's one of the only bright spots on the offense in terms of, OBP and OPS and, hitting home runs. I mean, it's not outstanding. He's not somebody that's going to carry the team, but, if you had somebody like Guerrero or Bichette doing sort of what we know they can do, he's definitely a piece that's going to really extend that lineup and lengthen it out and be a threat down there in the 6th spot. So I agree with you that he's in a good position, and he's kind of being played the way that he should be. And you mentioned that he's kind of living in the trade shadow still. I think that's becoming less of a narrative than it used to be, especially last year. And even if somebody were to say that, I mean, it's hard for them to justify it based on the numbers. I mean, just looking at, I think Dalton Varsho has the same amount of home runs than Gurriel and Moreno do combined this year. So, I mean, and he's got a much greater WAR than them combined. So it's hard to argue that was a bad trade for the Blue Jays. I mean, I guess you can look at, what they did last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks, that is, and say, well, I would rather have that. But for me, it's the longer he's here, the less that's going to be a narrative. And I'm just hoping that, we can find some pieces that can surround him and moving forward into the future, because he's fairly young and he's going to be here for a little while. So yeah, let's hope that they can find him some help.
Speaking of bottom of the order, I guess now former Jays, Cavan Biggio, Dustin, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently he's already starting to get booed by LA Dodgers fans. So this was reported on the Jays Journal. And shout out to Rob for showing me his screen at work today and saying, hey, did you see this? So I don't think there's actual audio or video of this happening. So I guess we're kind of reporting it secondhand, and we don't really have too much confirmation here. But following his 3rd at-bat, Biggio was booed. So Biggio had 4 at-bats in the game on Saturday. And tell me where you've heard this before, Dustin. He struck out looking the first 3 at-bats and then lined out to right.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like him, staring at those borderline pitches. I'm surprised that they would boo him so early into the season. I mean, assuming it's true. But was that his first game?
I believe it was his 3rd game, so not far off. They seem to have kind of thrown him into the starting lineup right away. And I don't know if, when we said and talked about his getting DFA'd and then subsequently being traded, it seemed that he was a good fit for the Dodgers because of his versatility. We keep on talking about that. But his versatility was something that, would fit in on a team with exceptional talent, right? But it seems like they've kind of thrown him in almost expecting that he's going to be a bit of a different player this year than he has been. And I don't know. I don't know if that's really the right approach. I feel like a team like Los Angeles, I'd kind of want to get him like bedded into the team, get him kind of like a good roommate and kind of get him a good feel for things and, maybe, a pinch hit late in the game and kind of just grease those wheels a little bit before you throw him in. But it seemed like his first game, he was starting at third base. Like he didn't even start at third base very often. I don't even know if he started once third base here with the Jays. The Dodgers' response was not to the fact that he was being booed, but kind of making the move, is that they kind of thought they're hitting khakis, as Barker would call them, seemed to look at the numbers and seemed to think there was something there that they could extract. And I don't know, I do think there is something there. It's just he needs to be able to I think he just needs to be able to beat Cavan Biggio. And I don't know if he's just not comfortable. I don't know if there's a kind of an approach issue here, but watching borderline pitches and hoping that you're going to, pick up balls or enter walks, I don't think is really a great strategy for any major leaguer. Unless you're Juan Soto or something that just, he just had his eye for the plate is, above and beyond pretty much everyone else. But Cavan Biggio is not Juan Soto, even though he does swing from the left side. But I guess we'll see how it goes on this season with Biggio and see if he essentially lasts or if maybe this is just kind of a one-off, or even if it was reported correctly. Because as I said, right now there's no actual video of this or audio. It's just Jay's Journal reporting on a tweet. And I think the tweet was from a 643 Royals. So I don't know if that's a Kansas City account, but it was Cavan Biggio is getting booed 3 at-bats into his Dodgers career. I don't think that's actually true.
Yeah, that's why I asked if it was his first game.
Yeah, it's not exactly. Yeah, it's not. He definitely played earlier in the week, so it was his third game. But anyway, I don't know. Just something to chat about and to note.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's kind of a common trope that a team will look at other players on other teams and they're struggling and they're not living up to their kind of quote unquote potential, and they think, well, I can fix him, right? And so, I'm sure that's something that others see in Cavan Biggio. I'm not surprised that the Dodgers would say that, and they think that, there's something that they see that the Blue Jays didn't see, whatever the case may be. Every team's got, a book on most other players on other teams, and they think, well, this is how we're pitching Cavan to get him out, so let's tell him that, and then tell him how to, counter that or whatever. Who knows what they're thinking, but I think that it's not an incorrect thing to think, and I think that you're suggesting that he's being kind of thrown into the fire. Well, I mean, it's the Dodgers. I mean, that's the fans are going to have a pretty high expectation when you've got the kind of players at the top of the order like they do. They expect, somebody that's, is even at the bottom of the order to at least swing at the borderline pitches, try and get on base, try and do something, foul something off, rather than just staring at pitches and watching them go by for strike 3.
Dustin, before we go, just want to chat about the ongoing designated for assignment list. So we have added Daniel Vogelbach to that list. And so he was DFA'd. I thought it was a bit, not that I don't think Daniel Vogelbach should have, I don't, part of me doesn't understand why he was even on this team coming out of spring training. But I thought it was a bit surprising given that, they were like, oh, Vladdy playing third base and all these other things to get, Vogie some at-bats. But Daniel Vogelbach gets DFA'd last week, and Addison Barger called up again.
I mean, that's the move that needed to be made. If you ask almost every Blue Jays fan, the only thing that Vogelbach really gave them at this point was some vibes and the potential for some power, and he really didn't get that latter one going too often. So, I don't know. I think Barger, although he was up earlier in the year and didn't really have anything super impressive to show, I think he's kind of the future, or at least a part of the future for the team, and he really couldn't do a whole lot more down in AAA. So at a certain point, you got to bring him up, and it sucks for Vogelbach. I'm sure he'll land somewhere, but it is what it is. I think it was a good move, and seemed over the Cleveland series to have kind of had some good results. I mean, those three guys, when they were in there, were almost the only promising offense that they had to show. Even in the innings where they didn't score, it was, I kind of found myself when either Barger or Clement, especially Clement, who's been red hot lately, or Schneider were up to bat, I would get that feeling of like, okay, something could happen here, which is kind of a rare feeling these days in Blue Jays fandom.
Well, I would definitely agree, Dustin, about Barger. Like, I think at a certain point, you're not really going to get any better against AAA pitching. I think at a certain point, if you're hitting in the 300s at AAA, like, you got to go to the next level and see if it works for you up there, right? Like, nobody's going to do, your batting average just isn't going to keep going up and up and up. In AAA, it's probably going to settle around a certain level, especially for a player like Barger. But he seems like he is, I don't know, bringing some youth to the team, probably some fun, energy, obviously. Now, do we think he's going to be more of right field or third base? Or is he going to be thrown back in the left field again?
I mean, I think knowing the Blue Jays, they'll use him everywhere. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of some of the roster decisions that they've made. At a lot of levels is just that flexibility. If IKF keeps hitting the way that he's been hitting lately, I mean, I would expect him to see a lot more outfield. And either DH or give Springer a lot more.
Well, yeah, and this is the problem. Like, this is again the problem with the Jays is like they have all these Swiss Army knives when a good chef's knife is probably would be better, right? And constantly moving players around, and I don't know. I'm not going to weigh in and say that I think this is affecting their abilities with the bat, right, or their proficiency at the plate, but it's not a sign of a good team. It's definitely this is another a reason why this team is mid, and the constant just shuffling around. Now, the flip side of that is when you have an injury or something happens, you have guys that can step in. But if you're gonna call up Addison Barger, I think you got to give him at bats, and I think you have to have a plan of where he's gonna play. 5 of 7 games. If there's 7 games that week, 4 or 5 of them, he should really be starting getting at bats, because you need to find out what this guy's, can he hang or not? And right now, I think I don't know. I need to see a lot more of him. He definitely seems like I said he has the energy. Guy swings super hard, but is that something that's going to translate to having a decent average in the majors? Well, we'll see. Now, Dustin, I wanted to ask you before we go, do you see any other candidates on this team that may get DFA'd?
I mean, the easy answer is someone, in the bullpen, but I'm guessing you're more asking about the position players.
Yeah, I am, yes.
Yeah. No, honestly, I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody on the position side that would get DFA'd. Either people have options or they're they've just got too much kind of tenure for that to happen. Like they're not going to DFA Justin Turner or even IKF. So I mean those are the most likely candidates from that perspective, but I don't see them happening at all.
The two candidates that I have, we kind of touched on one already, and I think we touched on the reason why he wouldn't get DFA'd, but I think Kevin Kiermaier's got to be on that list, right? If he is becoming less and less involved in this team, and especially if the team is doing better as he plays less and less, I could see something going on there. The other one is Justin Turner. I think he's starting to shake it off a little bit and get a few more hits, and just be a bit more productive at the plate. If we were going to continue to see, May 2024 Justin Turner, I think he would definitely be a candidate. Like the Astros just DFA'd Jose Abreu, right? And don't think, are they really that different? They seem like a similar profile kind of player. One plays a lot more first base, obviously, but if Justin Turner's not going to be productive at the plate, then what does he really offer?
I mean, Justin Turner hasn't really had the extended bad play. Like he hasn't had the extended downturn that Abreu has had. I think the reason why I would say him and Kiermaier to a certain degree are not going to get DFA'd is that they're trade chips. If it's that bad on the team side that they're just gonna kind of give up on going for them and trading them, then those are the guys that you want to at least try and get some value for, right? And if if they start producing, then that maybe turns things around, and then they don't get traded, and there's no reason to DFA them. It's like, who are you going to DFA them for, right?
Well, that's a good question too.
The only person would be, I guess, Aurelvis Martinez, but I don't know. I don't know if he's ready. He plays, a position that's already kind of stacked at the big leagues, and there's just no reason to, send somebody like Justin Turner, who is mostly right now kind of a bench guy, and then bring up Aurelvis Martinez. The same problem that you just were talking about with Addison Barger is you just if you bring them up, you want to give them opportunities and you want to give them playing time, and that a bench role is just not that position for that guy. So I think the most likely outcome is that Addison Barger, Ernie Clement, David Schneider, they start having a little more success and they get a little more at bats, and Kiermaier, Springer, and Turner are more bench guys. Maybe come off, for a matchup, pinch hit type thing, because they've got the experience to do that, especially someone like Turner.
Yeah, and definitely the trade chips, definitely not something I guess was top of mind, but if you DFA'd him, it kind of just forces a trade, you know what I mean? Because it's you have to trade, or if you can't trade them in a certain amount of time, I think you have to waive them. But anyway, yeah, I think they're definitely both, you keep them around, and they both have expiring contracts. So, and maybe a contender wants to add, an outfielder in Kiermaier's
especially
case.
Kiermaier.
Yeah.
I
think he does. I think he does offer some. I think he probably offers more value to a team that would receive him than they're kind of willing to give up. Like they're not going to give up much for Kevin Kiermaier or really Justin Turner, but another prospect, and who knows, maybe they work out.
Yeah, it'll be like a relief arm, AAA, AA relief arm type guy, but those are valuable.
All right, Dustin, short one today, but thank you very much for joining me. Can you plug the podcast social media?
Yeah, follow us on X, website formerly known as Twitter, at pod, PODS number 2S. And you can email us at station2pod@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining me.